Hey, what is up, Satsmate Stackers? Today, I'm going to talk about the freedom to invest in Bitcoin and other assets that we see fit. Now, as you guys are well aware, the biggest institutions and capital allocators across the world, they can sometimes influence or control the way in which we invest. I'll just give an example that probably most people are familiar with. That is your retirement account. Now, oftentimes in your retirement accounts, you can't actually allocate the capital as you see fit. For example, if you wanted to buy silver or gold or any type of commodity, the plan is restricted by both your employer but also the offerings that they have available on their platform. So, for me, my company, they use Vanguard, and while they give you a match, the company gives a match. If you do the math, yeah, you get a match, but you're investing in underperforming assets. So it's like, okay, so I get a 3% match, but you're going to get a rate of return of 7% a year. So you're essentially going to underperform the market. The thing that I don't like about it is it's like, I should have the freedom to allocate my capital as I see fit. Now, I understand why they want to restrict and control how you invest your money, because there's a lot of people out there that will allocate their money towards the wrong things, and they will be in a very bad position for retirement. So, it's just one of those things where I think in the future, our plans and our retirements, they should have more forward-thinking investments. That way, you're not just going to get a 3, 4, or 5% rate of return per year, right? So there was the Senate Bill 1025, and it was essentially the public monies with an investment in Bitcoin. So they were able to, the Arizona State Retirement System, which I'm from Arizona, that they would actually invest money into Bitcoin, essentially. Now, it was actually, unfortunately, it was vetoed by Katie Hobbs the other day. She's very, very corrupt. I'll go into that later. But the Arizona State Retirement System, now they have to continue investing in traditional assets, not in things like Bitcoin. And I think some may look at this as a good thing. I don't think it's a good thing. I don't think Bitcoin needs Arizona. I think Arizona does need Bitcoin. And I think it's one of those things where down the road, there will be a shock and awe, like, wow, I can't believe we didn't take advantage of Bitcoin under 200K or 300K, right? And so I think Arizona may underperform other states who do choose to allocate towards this asset. Funny thing enough is actually the Arizona State Retirement System, they own like 60-some thousand shares of MSTR, which is kind of funny because it's like they say they won't go towards like untested investments like Bitcoin, yet they're literally allocating 60,000 towards a leveraged Bitcoin play such as MSTR. So it's funny how they don't want the base asset, but they're investing with that indirect exposure. So very, very funny. The point though is this: I've kind of seen it. I'm sure many of you guys do as well. That it seems like most of the predominant Democrats throughout the country, the Elizabeth Warrens, the Ilhans, the AOCs, they seem to be very against Bitcoin for some reason. And then you get the Republicans, and they're very for Bitcoin. I genuinely don't think this should be this should not be a left or right issue. This should be bipartisan. This should be on both sides of the aisle. And I don't think it's good that like the Democrats are essentially pretty much saying like, no, like Bitcoin is a Republican asset. It's almost like it's a political statement they're making. And so what I think is happening too is like, I think the Democrats, they've been in charge for a while. They passed a lot of regulation on banks to be more, to protect the consumers, essentially. And so I think a lot of what's happening is there's money going to these Democrats behind closed doors. The Elizabeth Warrens, the Katie Hobbs, the bankers are behind closed doors. You won't see anything public on it, but they're writing them checks. They're taking them out to dinner. They're giving them money for their campaigns. There's a lot of things that can happen behind closed doors that you and I can't see. And so I think that's why a lot of the Democrats are against it, is because they are beholden to the big banks. They're beholden to the investment funds, and they don't have the freedom to invest as they wish. They are told by their donors who they should vote for, or what bills they should pass. So very, very scary stuff that we're seeing on the Democratic side of the aisle. That's why I ask everyone this, like, ask yourself why. Why would they not want to pass something like this? Or why would they not want you to invest in assets where you can outperform? It's because they want to keep you in control. They want to keep you under their thumb. They don't want you to be seeing these outsized gains, because then you're not under their thumb, essentially. So I think a lot of these Democrats, they want more of the system, more of the same, more of the bureaucracy, because it benefits them and it benefits their donors. And they're not going to change unless the whole fiat system comes and falls apart, because they are literally beholden to who pays and writes their checks. So, I will say this, though, and I'm going to look at the other side of the aisle really quick, or the other side of the case. Now, there is something to be said about tested investments. Now, Bitcoin is, 16 years old now? But there was a situation a few years ago where the Ontario Teachers Pension Fund invested in FTX. Now, we all know what ended up happening to FTX. It went under, and they lost their entire investment, essentially. I don't know if they were able to get it all back, but there is a case to be made towards not allocating capital towards very risky endeavors. And I do think that FTX was a horrible investment. I think there's other things that have been horrible investments where you just got to be careful when you're playing with pension money, endowment money. Like, yeah, you do need to get a good rate of return, but you can't just be, aping into Rivian stock, and you can't be aping into, cryptocurrency companies or NFTs. You gotta be sensible. And I think that Ontario Pension Fund was a good example of what not to do. And, I know a lot of Bitcoiners that invested in like the Celsiuses and the BlockFis and the Voyagers. A lot of them lost their money, right? And, it's just one of those lessons that you almost learn the hard way, right? So, it's so critical that these pensions invest the right way. And I do think Bitcoin would be a good, even if it's 1, 2, 3%. So it was kind of sad to see that they didn't even entertain a small percentage. They don't need to be going 100% full porting, and they can keep their 80-20 portfolio, but it's just sad that they're not leaning in towards forward-thinking investments, especially with all the strong tailwinds behind them. At the end of the day, if individuals, if pensioners or individuals, they want something like this, it should be allowed, right? You shouldn't have the governor, Katie Hobbs, tell you what you can and can't invest in. You should not have that happen, because, what does she know? Does she know more than Larry Fink? I don't know. Maybe. I don't think so. I doubt it, actually. And I think the same goes with everything, guys. Gold, silver, other commodities, they should be allowed as well. Like, I'm not saying, it only needs to be Bitcoin. Like, I'm a Bitcoin maxi, but like, I also see, like, you're playing with the people's life energy here, right? So you got to be careful. There's no exception with Bitcoin. There's no exception with any of these commodities. They should even invest in real estate where they can, but you shouldn't just be limiting investors' allocations. Just like how I wanted to invest in certain assets in my Vanguard, and they said, no, you can only invest what your employer tells you to invest in. And it's like 3 shitty ETFs, guys. So it's just one of those things where you got to keep speaking up and pushing back and just doing what you can. So, I think Katie Hobbs and many people in the administration, they need to take the time to learn about the asset, right? I think this whole decision will end up hurting Katie Hobbs in the long run. I think it'll actually end up hurting the people in the retirement system even more. It'll hurt the wealth of Arizona even more. And I think it's one of those things where a couple years will go by. Texas and Wyoming, many other states will approve this. They will outperform. They will do very well. And Arizona will get on the bandwagon, 2028, 2027, 2028, or when it's too late, right? And so, that's the thing when it comes to Bitcoin and investments is sometimes it pays to be early and it pays to have that foresight that others don't have, right? And so it's very unfortunate that Arizona does not have that foresight, especially, specifically Katie Hobbs. Wendy Rogers, our senator, she actually has shown a lot of support. She's going to try to push it through again. I don't know the process for that, but there are many people in our legislature and our representatives that do want this to happen. So I think it's just a few people at the top in Arizona. I don't think it's many. And I think in the long run, I think Arizona will be prosperous. And I think something like this will be beneficial for Arizonans. And I think it'll be beneficial to other states as well. Hopefully they study Bitcoin. Hopefully they learn about it. Anyways, guys, you give this a share, give it a comment, a like. Click one of the links in the description. They help support me. And I'll see you guys in the next one.